All right. Well, thank you. Good morning, everyone. It is October 5th, 2023. Hard to believe that. And welcome to the Transportation Committee meeting for the Sacramento Area Council of Governments. I do believe that we have everyone here so that we have a quorum, but we'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would join me.
Okay.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you take roll, please?
Thank you. Good morning. Director Branscombe?
Yes, ma'am.
Chapman? I'll come back to Director Chapman. I did see him online earlier. Director Gog?
Yes.
Thank you. Director Guerrero? Absent. Director Jennings?
Here.
Joyner?
Here.
Lauren?
Here.
Sander? Absent. Vice Chair Soon? Absent. Chair Gallardo?
Yes.
And ex officio member Fong for Benipaw?
Here.
Thank you.
Well, thank you and welcome. The next item on our agenda is our public comment opportunity. This is a chance for anyone from the public to comment on any item that is not on our agenda. We do set aside 10 minutes at this point in time in the agenda for public comment, and we would add additional if needed at the end of our agenda. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment this morning?
We do. We have one public comment, Alan Hirsch with YOLO Mobility. Would you like me to go ahead and have him speak now?
Please.
Thank you. Mr. Hirsch, you're in the meeting and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Very good. All the great cities in the world, London, New York, Paris, they all put in congestion pricing to basically restrict and limit the number of cars that can come into their city at rush hour and peak times. And they do it at their advantage by having bridges into their town. They can put this kind of a gate things. From Sacramento City, from the west, has the causeway as the only way in other than going the Great Circle route to I-5. So if we want to basically control traffic and have less congestion on our freeways in downtown Sacramento, why are we widening the YOLO Causeway? Why are we adding another lane on it? Even if it's a managed lane, you're adding 25%, 30% capacity to that thing, putting 30% more cars on the road in the downtown area of Sacramento County. And most of the induced demand will come from at rush hour. The ITS Department of the Institute of Transportation Studies at UC Davis says it'll add 178 million miles of VMT a year. That's equivalent to 12,000 cars on the road that will come into Sacramento County at rush hour. This does not seem to be moving in the wrong direction. I thought we wanted to reduce car driving and reduce climate change. You saw in Politico yesterday, there was a whistleblower at Caltrans, a top level whistleblower who basically says Caltrans has been playing games with the money and funding the widening before the environmental statement is out. This is the corruption we have with Caltrans is an army of engineers with hammers, and they only know how to build, they want to build freeways, wider freeways. We can't do this anymore. We have a climate change crisis. The good cities in the world are reducing driving in our city and moving to transit, and the I-80 corridor is ideal for transit. We should be improving that and not widening freeways. Instead, we are moving the other direction. If Tahoe traffic is a big problem on I-80, why can't you even put skis on the train when you go to Truckee? You can't even put a mountain bikes on the train when you go to Truckee. We have a third world rail system in our region, and we haven't focused on it. People forget that 10 years ago, we saw so little of our train service. We moved the downtown Sacramento train service 1,000 feet further from our downtown, 0.2 miles further from our downtown. We've treated transit as if it's secondary. It's only for the poor people, but it's really not for the poor people because the Causeway, it's a $9 fare from Davis to Sacramento on the Amtrak service, of the Capital Corridor service. We treat it like a stepchild. We need a new way if we're going to address climate change, and we're not moving that direction. Caltrans is part of the problem because they're designed to do man with hammers.
Mr. Hirsch, your 3 minutes is up.
Thank you, Mr. Hirsch. Madam Clerk, do we have any other public comment?
We have no other public comment.
Thank you. We will close public comment and move on to our agenda. Our next item is our consent agenda. We have 3 items on there. Is there any questions or any item anyone would like to pull from the consent item?
Madam Chair, I move to approve the consent.
Thank you, Director Gahn.
Joyner will second.
Thank you, Director Joyner. Moved and seconded. Ma'am, would you take a roll call vote, please?
Thank you. Director Branscombe,
Yes.
Chapman,
Aye.
Gog,
Yes.
Guerrero absent, Jennings,
Yes.
Joyner,
Aye.
Lauren,
Aye.
Sander, absent, Vice Chair Soon, absent, and Chair Gallardo.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Before we move on to our action item, one of the things we've worked a little bit this year is trying to get to know each other a little better. I'm convinced that we work well together when we know each other and are a little more connected. So I'm going to ask everybody to 15 seconds, and whoever wants to jump in first, I'm good with it. In baseball, if you are the home team batter, you've got a walk-up song, something that gets you motivated and pumps you for the day. So think about what's that song that when you're in the car, you just sing it out loud when you're all by yourself. Or if you want that walk-up song when you're going to start your meeting, tell me what it is. And I'm going to start and say 4 Non-Blondes. They have a song called What's Up. It's a ridiculously crazy song to sing, but if I'm driving in the car by myself, I might be singing it at the top of my lungs. I'm looking at Paul. So Director Joyner, I'm going to ask you to kick us off.
I knew you would. You know what? I don't have one.
Oh, but you need one.
Do I need one? What would it be? I'll throw it back on you. What I was thinking was, and you gave the baseball reference, put me in, coach, works for me on that one.
You know what? That's perfect.
But driving down the freeway, screaming at the top of my lungs, some song, probably not.
Oh, I'm going to send you a playlist. That's
All
it.
right.
Let's see. This state, I'm thinking who's, I see Director Sanders slipped in. So now I know what his walk-up song should be, but we'll see if he gets it right.
Oh, well, that's interesting. I actually had to pick one as one of the officers of the National League of Cities, because I walk on the stage at the meeting, they want to play something, right? I had to pick bumper music. And so I picked what was sort of like a middle school, high school anthem of Footloose, right? Footloose
Nice.
was the one I chose because it's got that great rhythm at the beginning. Everybody knows what it is immediately. That's
And
what I
it's
use.
festive, and it's definitely festive. I like it. I thought you were going to say "Here Come the Irish," but
We're getting there.
perfect. Director Jennings, come on! I see you smiling. I know you have a walk-up song.
Well, my walk-up song is one that I told my grandkids that they could use, and that could actually be my name as their grandfather. And so my walk-up song is, I love it when you call me Big Papi. Love it. Big Papi. Big Papi.
Oh, that's perfect. I think football has to bring that in too. There should be some kind of walk-up song. Director Gog, when you're out there, with all those peaches, is anything that you're singing?
Yes, I do. It's an old song that kind of runs through my mind all the time. It's I'm Coming Home.
Oh, nice. Very nice.
10 years after, sing that. Back from 60.
You're going 60s.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful song. I love that. Thank you. Let's see. Director Soon, are you there?
I'm here. Hi,
Good morning.
morning.
Got a walk-up song that you would love to play when you step up to the podium for something fun?
You put me on the spot here. I don't know. No, I like too many songs. I don't know.
See, now you'll
A
have
lot
a
of
choice.
different genres.
Hey, you'll think of it. It'll bother you all through the day today, and you'll come up with them. I feel like you will.
Okay.
Director Branscombe, I was driving through Marysville yesterday, thought about you. Got to have that beautiful visit up at Collins Lake. It's absolutely stunning. So what kind of music are you singing in Marysville?
You put the pressure on here, but a song did come to mind, and it's from the 80s by the Fine Young Cannibals, Drives Me Crazy.
Crazy.
Anybody who knows that song knows how to dance. But however, there is one other song I've been paying attention to, and it's just come out on, I saw it on YouTube. A young Dutch singer, her name is Emily Koch, spelled K-O-K, and the song is Voila. I recommend it. It is unbelievably great. And there's a couple of versions, the one with the big orchestra behind her. I find myself humming that song all the time.
That sounds worthwhile to check it out.
Yeah.
Director Lauren.
Well, what I'd like to mention, I probably shouldn't because there are words in it that aren't public for public use. So I will go with September.
Hey, everybody played it. The 21st of September, it has to happen. It's just what
That's
we
right.
do. By the way,
It's
I
one of my
see
favorite
coming-
months.
They're going to be playing in Lincoln, Director Joyner. I say that band's coming this fall to Lincoln. It's worth it just to go hear that song.
Awesome.
Any of my staff, let's see if I get all my directors, any of my staff village. Oh, Director Chapman.
Hey, good morning. Being a longtime Red Sox fan, I would have to pick Sweet Caroline by Neil Diamond. The song they always
I love the generations that's gone through, that everybody knows Sweet Caroline. It's true. Yeah, any of our staff want to jump in? Anybody has a great song that they just, come on, it's in your head. I know it is.
I'm like Director Soon. I like everything, but if I had to pick one, Respect by Aretha Franklin.
Oh,
Yeah.
Sing it to my kids often.
Mine would be Can't Stop the Feeling by Justin Timberlake.
That is a great song.
Yeah.
It's just fun. That's so true. I know. How about you?
It's a newer Bryan Adams song. It's called So Happy It Hurts. It's just it pumps you up and it's uplifting and positive. I love it.
To check that one out. I don't know that Bryan Adams song, but I will look. I got to find Voila and this new Bryan Adams. Now I got things to look at. And I say, I don't see Greg's face or Clint, but I know they're out there. You guys have a great song that it's popping. If not, Victoria will do it. She's got it.
I'm going to buy Greg and Clint some time and say anything by ELO, but especially Sweet Talking Woman.
Wow, that's digging back. I'm like, geez, that's my old age stuff.
I will go with a heavy metal song, Enter Sandman by Metallica.
I want you to know I used that for my walk-up song at the last time I did State of the City, because they actually started playing something that was so not me, and so I made them change it to Enter the Sandman. It feels powerful. Anybody else? I say, I don't know if Eric or Clint or Alex here. Hey, Caltrans got to have a favorite song. It's something working on the roads of some kind of song.
I was actually going to say the Sweet Caroline with Neil Diamond. That was my dad's favorite song too. So I agree with Director Chapman.
Love it. Well, anyone else? Well, thank you for sharing. Honestly, I feel like I know everybody just a little bit better. It helps. So thank you so much. And welcome again to Transportation. And let's start with our first action item. And this is the 2024 project delivery process. And Miguel Mendoza is going to be our presenter. Wait, but Miguel, you didn't give us a walk-up song.
Yeah, I was thinking about it, and I'd like to give you one now. My son, who's almost 2, watches the movie Cars every day, and we've been watching it for 3 months. So "Life is a Highway" by Rascal Flatts is constantly going on in my head. So it is right now, and it makes me think of him. So it's
And right now, Alex is going, that should have been mine. That's what he's thinking. Well, thank you. And we're looking forward to your presentation.
Yeah, thank you. So again, Miguel Mendoza, I'm an analyst here in planning and programming. I haven't seen you all in such a long time, so I'm glad that I'm able to sort of make up time here with the next few action items. But the first one I have before you today is the 2024 project delivery process. I won't have a PowerPoint for you, but I will have one brief visual aid when the time comes. So the action that we are requesting for you today is for the Transportation Committee to recommend to the board the approval of the 2024 project delivery process. And I'd kind of like to briefly go over the purpose of the process and then what it is. The project delivery process is a framework and a process for SACOG, but also our partner agencies, to be able to come forward and request their funding for their projects. And I want to clarify that these are projects that have been awarded funds by the SACOG board through regional funding rounds. The process does not outline the use of funds from other sources. So, to put a finer point on it, these are projects, for example, that were just awarded in the 2023 regional funding round. They will go through this process as well. The process, in short, and transitioning to what the process is, has 3 tiers of projects. And tier 1 projects are projects that have been programmed in a certain year. And an easy way to think about it would be programs that have reserved funding during a certain year of federal fiscal year. And the programming of these projects are done in consultation with partner agencies, your jurisdictions, depending on, of course, timeline, the specific type of funding, and a host of other things. And these are things that we constantly and regularly meet with your agencies about. So these tier 1 projects will have priority from the beginning of the federal fiscal year until January 31st. In essence, whenever the projects that have been programmed for a specific year are ready to come forward between these two, between the October 1st and January 31st, they can be assured that the funds will be there for them when they want to use it. Tier 2 projects, as we move into our second level, our overall goal as a region is to use the available funds, federal funds, that are given to us every year. And so tier 2 projects are projects that are in outer years of our Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Plan, so our short range plan. And after January 31st, they have the option of requesting to move forward from their year to the current year. And so, as you probably started to think, this is a combination of a reservation and a first come, first serve system, right? We want to give projects a chance to come in and use their funds when they're ready, but also allow for projects in outer years to come in and use the funds if they're ahead of schedule. I want to make a distinction, though, that once January 31st passes, those projects that originally had priority are still able to come forward and claim funds if they are available. So in this case, we're merely opening it up to the rest of the projects that have been awarded funding. And then the last tier are tier 3 projects, and these are projects that may have not been awarded funds or have been awarded funds but have increased costs, right? And it'll outline in your packet that we are able to, if there are still funds available, we're able to maybe loan these projects some funds to cover the increase in cost, and then they would subsequently pay us back. Now, within these 3, I want to make sure to address the projects that perhaps need a little bit more time in their process. So for project, for example, in 2024, has been reserved money, but is really unable to come forward and start the project, there are options to them. And this is where I would like to, if you'd be patient with me a little bit, share my screen here. And so hopefully this graphic is useful in terms of figuring out what happens. So year one projects those are the priority ones. And you'll see that there are other projects in other years as well. And then in the middle of the section, the projects that are unable to deliver, we'll remove them from the queue and fill them in with projects from outer years that want to come in. Now, the projects that were not able to come in for their funds, they're not out of luck, right? What we will do is in consultation with them and really depending on the constraints of outer years, where the money is and where other projects have vacated, we will reallocate them to those years. That way they still have, they can still be assured that they will have funds in a year of our short-range metropolitan transportation improvement program. And once they're there, they can be tier 2 projects in a future year, or tier 1 projects if they happen to land on the next following year. So in short, this is a system that aims to accomplish 3 things. One is use all the funds that we have in the region by encouraging early delivery, and inversely, kind of for the projects that don't want to come in, we'll give them options on that. 2, that creates a system that still allows projects that are on time to get their funds. And 3, creates a system that is fair to those who may need a little bit more time, because we know that in the federal process and just in life in general, sometimes you just need a little bit more time to complete the things that you want to complete. And with that, I'm going to reiterate the request before you today, which is to recommend to the board to approve the 2024 project delivery process for projects funded in SACOG's regional funding rounds. I'm going to pause here if there's any questions or anything you'd like me to address.
Thank you. Any questions for Miguel on this item? All right, I am not seeing any hands up. Oh, yes.
Real quickly, I presume there are no significant changes from the last time this has been presented?
Yes, yeah, sorry, I meant to mention that. This process has been largely the same for many years because it's been very effective. So thank you.
No, it sounded very familiar. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right,
I think I heard a move to approve, and I will second that.
Let me open up for public comment and see if I have any comment from the public on this.
There's no public comment.
Thank you so much. Then Director Jennings, do I have a motion to approve?
Well, I think Director Branscombe made the motion, and I'll second it.
Thank you. I'd say.
If not, I will make it.
Just confirming, Director Braxton, I didn't catch that. So just confirming you did make a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Perfect. Director Branscombe?
Yes, ma'am.
Chapman? Gog?
Yes.
Guerrero? Absent. Jennings?
Yes.
Joyner?
Yes.
Lauren?
Yes.
Sander? Director Sander, could you indicate your vote, please? Okay, I'll come back to him. Vice Chair Soon?
Aye.
Chair Gallardo?
Aye.
And Director Sander, if you're there, could you indicate your vote, please? Okay, I'll mark him absent, but motion carries.
Thank you. Miguel, you stay with us as we move on to our next item. Item 5 is the delegated authority for adoption of the 2024 Regional Transportation Improvement Program. And if you would begin with your presentation, please.
Thank you, Chair Gallardo. Hi again. Again, making up for lost time, right? I haven't seen this committee in a few months. Again, Miguel Mendoza, analyst here, assisting in the area of programming and project delivery. And the item before you today is the Regional Transportation Improvement Program, or rather the recommended action is that the Transportation Committee recommend that the board delegate authority to the December 11th meeting of the Strategic Planning Committee to adopt the 2024 Regional Transportation Improvement Program and submit it to the CTC, California Transportation Commission. I apologize, that is like a word salad if I've ever had one. In essence, what we're asking for here is for the Transportation Committee to recommend that the board give SPC, Strategic Planning Committee, the authority to approve our RTIP submittal to the California Transportation Commission. I want to begin with sort of the purpose of why we're even asking this in the first place. The RTIP, or Regional Transportation Improvement Program, is the regional part of the overall larger state transportation improvement program. So the STIP is managed and by the California Transportation Commission, and it programs state transportation dollars on multimodal projects. So we're looking at roads, transit, active transportation. The STIP is adopted by the CTC. Sorry, I'm going to try not to use too many acronyms here. The State Transportation Improvement Program is adopted by the California Transportation Commission every odd or even numbered year. So that means that regions like ourselves need to prepare our regional component every odd numbered year, right before the approval. So for example, our partners at El Dorado and Placer will prepare their regional portions of the STIP and are preparing them for submittal as well. The regional portion is due to California Transportation Commission staff on December 15th of every odd numbered year. And the reason why we are before you today asking for this delegation is while we have received approval from California Transportation Commission staff to submit the regional portion of the STIP later than December 15th. So we were originally targeting December 21st, which is the next board meeting or the board meeting in December. We wanted to be a little bit more conservative and ask for this approval in case there is no quorum on the 21st. That would leave us high and dry, as they say, on being able to submit an approved resolution to the California Transportation Commission. The closest committee meeting before the deadline would be December 11th. And that's why we'd look at that one. And also it proves to be, it would also assist us in kind of preparing and vetting out all the documents before submittal. And real briefly, I'll describe what it is and what we're programming or proposing to program in this regional component of the overall larger program. The SACOG's regional plan or program will only include projects that have been awarded by SACOG board in previous regional funding rounds. So for example, during the last item, we were talking about federal dollars that we manage, and that's the process they will go through. For this specific item, these are dollars that were also in the regional funding round, but is managed by California Transportation Commission. So there will be no new policy actions when we propose to program these projects. These are all projects that the board has seen or approved and have made a policy decision on. So nothing new on our part. Other regions may do that. They might have a new funding round just for STIP, but however, for in our case, these are all ones that you have seen. The timeline typically is we submit our regional component in December, and then the California Transportation Commission will approve will hopefully approve the whole plan overall statewide in March of 2024. Typically, California Transportation Commission staff will recommend different years than what we recommend based on financial constraints. So if there are any changes, we will go back and update you all on what those changes might be in between approval by the Strategic Planning Committee and approval of the STIP. So once again, the action is to recommend to the board to give the Strategic Planning Committee delegated authority to approve the RTIP and submit it to CTC. And I'm going to pause here again. If there's any questions or anything I can clarify.
Thank you. I see Director Branscombe, you have your hand raised.
You're on mute, Director Branscombe.
Thank you. You said approved, quote unquote, approved resolution. Whose discretion are we talking about there with respect to being approved?
I'm sorry, I might need a little bit of clarification.
Are we exercising discretion that SACOG or does it have to be approved in the sense that it has to fit into some framework imposed from above, if you will?
Oh, I believe it's probably a little of both, just like many things. But to answer the question more pointedly, approve as in leaning towards discretion of SACOG. You'll see the whole document, and you'll be able to look at it and all the programs in it. And then
Miguel, maybe I can help you out a little bit on that. So I just really zooming way out because Miguel's in the details on all this. So SACOG submits this to the California Transportation Commission as an entire package. The CTC has the option to approve or reject the STIP as it's submitted. So that's the approval that SACOG needs from the state. The action here is to change the approval of what is submitted from the board to the Strategic Planning Committee. So we're just bringing it to this committee first. It would go to the board and the board would have to say, yes, we approve the delegation from the full board to the Strategic Planning Committee.
Okay, and but it still has to, it sounds like it still needs to fit within some construct created at the higher level.
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
I'll just say I was afraid of that. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. I'm with the weeds with the ants here, so sometimes I lose the question. So
Thank you. Any other questions? Director Joyner? Oh yeah, there is a hand under that record button. There you go.
There is. So I guess I've got more of a procedural question here. I'm just going to acknowledge that the whole MOU and Measure A thing has caused me to be really cautious about delegating authority. Is there a reason we can't get this done and approved at the November board meeting and not delegate authority beyond that?
yeah, good question. We also looked at that option. And to be quite frank, it would take about a month off of what we would have otherwise to prepare this document. And so we felt that perhaps more time is always good and as closest to the deadline as we can get. But I do want to iterate that whatever is delegated and approved, we'll go back to the board and update the decisions or what has been approved at that point. So it will be able to be seen by the full board at some point.
Be seen by, but at best it would be a ratification of what had already happened. There'd be no clawing that back if the board felt it was needed.
Right, and I think if I could, a positive would be we are only proposing to program projects that have already been approved by the board as a whole through the funding round. So we're not inserting anything that that have not previously been approved through our regional funding rounds.
And Director Joyner, if I could add 2 points to that, this is Mike Maurer, General Counsel. One thing is that with the Strategic Planning Committee meeting where this is presented, that will be a public meeting and we will be able to take comment. So if for any reason, we'll put the items on the agenda ahead of time, and if the board wants to comment, that'll be an option at that meeting as well, which we'll mention to the full board. And then the intent would be to still bring it back to the full board on December 21st. We're essentially just hedging our bets in a way in case we're not able to actually have that meeting. So it's, we are looking at both options, and I want to make sure that we're being fully transparent with everything.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Great questions. Any other questions? I am not seeing any other hands up. Miguel, do you want to continue?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. That was really it. And just looking for the action, if approved or not. Thank you.
All right. I'm going to open it up for public comment. No other questions from the board. I will open it to public comment. Do we have any members of the public to comment on this item?
There's no public comment.
All right. I will close public comment and bring it back to the board.
Madam Chair, I move to approve.
Thank you. Do we have
Lauren will second.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve in a second. If you take a roll call vote, please.
Director Branscombe,
Yes.
Chapman,
Aye.
Gog,
Yes.
Guerrero absent, Jennings,
Yes.
Joyner,
No.
Lauren,
Aye.
Sander. Director Sander, could you indicate your vote, please? Okay. I'll mark him absent. Vice Chair Soon
Aye.
and Chair Gallardo.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Well, Miguel, it is your day, it looks like. So we are moving on to our next item. Item 6 is the public hearing. Let's see, and we will begin the public hearing with the presentation on the Metropolitan Transportation Plan Amendment 11. If you would go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you, Chair Gallardo. I believe this is the last that you'll hear of me today. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I'll leave that up to you. But today, again, the item before you is the public hearing of the 2023 Metropolitan Transportation Plan, Amendment number 11 to the 2023 Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program, and the air quality conformity analysis. And I'd like to briefly describe what these are and why we are requesting an opening of a public hearing. If you may recall, in November 2022, the Board of Directors authorized SACOG staff to pursue legislation to extend the blueprint or the Metropolitan Transportation Plan Sustainable Community Strategy, so the MTPSCS. And that would move it from spring 2024 to fall of 2025. Now, while we are pursuing that extension, we still do need to get, we still need to adopt a federally compliant Metropolitan Transportation Plan by November of this year. So that'll be 4 years after the adoption of the 2020 MTPSCS. The 2023 Federal Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which is our long-range plan, looks to really adopt, largely carry forward the same projects, programs, and policies as the 2020 MTPSCS. So that's one document. And then you may see that there's two other ones, the 2023 Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program, the amendment number 11 to that, and the air quality conformity. The 2023 Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program, amendment number 11, accompanies this document because in essence, any changes to the MTIP, or the Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program, that is our that captures 4 years of the long range plan. So any changes to projects in that short range plan effectively also amends our long range document. And so you'll see in that amendment 11, there will be a list of projects and then the changes that have been proposed and accepted through the process as we're going through it still. And those are the one and the same projects is also being amended in the long range plan. And then of course, the third document is the air quality conformity determination, and that document hopes to demonstrate that the plan is in conformity with the state implementation plan for air quality conformity and Clean Air Act. And so those are our three documents. And the reason we are before you today requesting an opening of a public hearing is, as part of the process, SACOG must circulate all the documents publicly for at least the 45 days of public review, and then also hold a public hearing. And so this is the public hearing within that 45 days. I'm going to put a point or clarify a point though, that any comments received today will not be addressed today, but rather will be addressed in a document as part of this overall process and will be considered by committee and board prior to final approval. So the purpose really is to receive, and then we will address and comment and then go through the process of that public comment period. So what I'll like to do is pause here for any questions or clarifications, otherwise hand it off to Chair Gallardo to open a public hearing.
Thank you. I would ask the directors for the board, any questions on this before we open the public hearing?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Branscombe.
There's a lot going on here. I mean, a lot. I've clicked on, I've been through this and it's a lot of material. And is there anything in there that should jump out at any one of the jurisdictions involved in SACOG?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry, I feel like I cut you off. Please keep going.
No, well, it's the kind of material that unless you have the trained eye, you could overlook something that would have a significant impact, positive or negative, on your own community or another community. And so the question is there something in there like that that would affect in a meaningful way, plus or minus any of the communities involved in SACOG?
Miguel, you want me to jump on that one?
Yeah, if I can make a brief comment and then I can pass it off to Clint. One thing that I would recommend also for anyone interested in what changed between the 2020 MTP-SCS and this document would be that list of projects in the amendment number 11 document. I believe it's on the second page. Those are the yes, sir. Yeah, so those would be the only changes really to the projects. We did a call for projects early this year and asked all of your respective staff to submit changes to their projects. And these are the ones that after some analysis that have gone through. And the idea really was to keep the changes as minimal as possible since we are still pursuing the extension of the blueprint. And so if anyone is interested in really seeing what has changed in my region, in my area, in my jurisdiction, it would be on that list of projects and changes. And Clint, I want to pass it off to you for anything.
Yeah, so yes, it's 22, I think, project changes in that first attachment to your staff report. The rest, what you see, all of the appendices, the plan document, those are very small editorial changes. It's got to be a 20-year document. So we bumped out our horizon year from 2040 to 2044. It's the same project list, but we did some interpolation to increase our population forecast for the purposes of doing our air quality conformity analysis. So most of all the changes in the document and the appendices, they're not substantive, they're not content. We did not want to change any of the policy decisions that the board made with the previous plan. So the nature of the changes really are these 22 projects. And then in the financial appendix, we added, at the request of Caltrans and FHWA, just some more detailed information about the two sales tax assumptions in the long range plan, the Measure A in Sacramento County, and then the potential for the sales tax in Placer County. No changes to those overall revenue assumptions, but we just included some additional clarification about kind of the status of those, any polling that has happened since we last adopted the plan. So that would be the other place where you'd see some content changes to the documents. Other than that, it's pretty much just editorial.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? All right, not seeing any, then at this point, I am going to open the public hearing on this item. Madam Clerk, do we have any members of the public that would like to comment?
We do. We have a comment from Alan Hirsch with YOLO Mobility. Shall I go ahead and have him speak now?
Yes, please.
All right. Alan, you are in the meeting and you have 3 minutes to speak.
I remain concerned that this plan does not address the transformational change we need in transportation planning. Continuing to widen freeways, adds more cars to the road, and which just recongest. Polls show that 60% of Americans know that you can't widen freeways to get out of congestion. This is wasteful money, wasteful spending. We should be investing in more in transit. I've been talking about this for 25 years. We have not made much progress. The SACOG board is gerrymandered so it has small cities on the fringe have overweight versus the people in the urban core of our region. So I know you guys like to have freeways. You think that's the only solution for your towns on the edges of the region, and that's true. But we need to focus on getting people into transit, and that's not happening. We haven't made the shift needed. Climate change is a crisis. Caltrans says by the end of this century, the Capitol Corridor line will be underwater for large sections of it. A 6.9-foot sea level rise. They're going to spend $500 million to save the SFO airport with dikes. This plan does not reflect the transformational change our community needs. When you look back 40 years and when we have this crisis, are you going to be part of the solution, or are you doing the same old, same old? Thanks for considering this. I know you're not going to change it, but this is what needs to be said. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hirsch. Do we have any other public comment on this item?
There's no other public comment.
All right, seeing none, I will close the public hearing. There is no action on this item at this point. It will be returning to us in November. I don't know if we have a specific date yet, but we will have that item again. Thank you. All right, moving on. Our next item, item 7, is the City of Isleton request for change of grant scope and contract administration. And Greg Chu will be our presenter.
Okay, Greg Chu. I'm on the planning and programming team here at SACOG. Most of my items go to the Land Use Committee, but this is a funding round issue being brought before you. So I manage the Community Design Grant Program. It's part of the 2-year SACOG regional funding cycle. And the Community Design Program is for community development projects that lead to the implementation of the blueprint principles. The City of Isleton received grants in 2021 and 23, and they're seeking a change. So the Community Design Program has competitive projects, which are for larger amounts of money, anywhere from $500,000 to $4 million. Or there's also non-competitive grants that jurisdictions can get based on a formula. And the smaller the grant amount, if the smallest amount is $100,000, if a jurisdiction requests $100,000, then it has the maximum flexibility because they're funded with SACOG monies, not federal or state transportation funds. So the City of Isleton received these 2 grants in 21 and 23. In any time that they make a change, because they are using SACOG monies, the SACOG board is the approver of allowing either scope change or extensions. So the city in 2021 received monies for general plan, a phase of their general plan, and they're seeking just 12 more months to do that. The grant program allows for that to happen. This is a common request that jurisdictions have. They're given 3 years. And if they want an extension, they can ask for a 4th year with SACOG board approval. In earlier this year, Isleton also received a grant for another phase of the general plan, but they're seeking to change the project. What happened was they were awarded this earlier this year, and then the city is on a great roll. They received 5 transportation grants, and then another 4 land use planning grants. So for the 5 transportation planning grants, they would like to get a professional consultant to manage them because they all have different requirements and timelines and consultants and so forth. So they'd like to take the $100,000 that they got earlier this year, and instead of using it for their general plan, is to go out and hire a consultant. So that's the second request. And then the third request is if they're allowed that second request of going out for a consultant, they're asking SACOG to serve as the contract administrator. So SACOG would go out and advertise for a consultant that performs grant coordination work, as well as hire or sign the consultant to a contract. But the city would own the project. They would decide the consultant, and they would also be responsible for managing the consultant's work as well as approving their invoices. SACOG would just pay the consultant upon the city's. So those are the 3 actions that are requested before the committee to bring forward to the board. Be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions on this item?
I think I do, Jill, if I may. So just so I'm clear, the 100,000 was originally for phase 5 of their general plan update, but now they want to use that money for a grant coordinator? That seems like a pretty big shift of purpose for those dollars. Do they no longer have the need for the general plan update?
Well, they have received 3 prior grants for the general plan, and in the next year and a half, there will be another round of the funding round. They're hoping that they would get the 5th phase again of the general plan. And in the other action is to extend the 4th phase of the general plan another year, because they need more time to finish off the 4th phase. So they're figuring if they're going to have to wait anyway to finish off the 4th phase, this new phase, and use that to manage the $1.2 million that they have in transportation funds grants, and to have the consultant help them on that. Otherwise, the city manager has to do all the grant coordination for all 9 grants himself. He's a busy person, so that's why the request is made.
And have we ever repurposed monies for such a different purpose?
Yes. So again, the $100,000 grants were meant to be the most flexible. Yes, we have made changes before. The main purpose is if it ultimately leads to some form of community development that is consistent with the blueprint principles. So the 5 grants, transportation grants that the city has are for public safety or safety for pedestrians and bicyclists along Highway 160, and then redesign of their main street and actual construction monies for improvements to their main streets to be more blueprint friendly. So the city's on a roll, like I said, with winning grants, and now they have so much money and administration to do that they literally can't manage it. They need some help to do that.
All right, thank you, Greg.
Greg, I'm being fairly familiar with Ileton, but how much city staff members do they have? I mean, it's a very small city, so I'm.
They have a secretary, they have a city manager, and they have 1 maintenance person. The city's 850 people. They don't have a city engineer. They don't have a planning staff. The city manager has to pretty much do everything.
That's as I remembered. That was a very, very, just literally a couple of people. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Seeing none, then I will open up for public comment. Is there any public comment on this item?
There's no public comment.
All right, I will bring it back and look for a motion.
Lauren will move.
Second by Chapman.
Thank you. Motion and second. A roll call vote, please.
Director Branscombe,
Yes.
Chapman, Gog,
Yes.
Guerrero absent, Jennings,
Yes.
Joyner,
Yes.
Lauren. Director Lauren, could you indicate your vote, please?
Aye, sorry.
Thank you. Sander,
Aye.
Vice Chair Soon,
Aye.
and Chair Galdo.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We're moving on to item 8, our carbon reduction program guidelines and budget, and Victoria Cacciatore will be our presenter.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here to present the draft carbon reduction program guidelines. As Director Galdo noted, I'm Victoria Cacciatore, and I am an analyst here on SACOG staff. And if we can pause for one moment, I want to have us consider the impact of the Wright brothers' first flight. And I'm not saying that to cover how we can cover really long distances with a short plane trip, but rather that the carbon emissions from that first flight of the Kitty Hawk are still here in our air 120 years later, and they will continue to be here for at least 9 more generations. And the longevity of carbon emissions in our air is one of the reasons why the federal government created the Carbon Reduction Program. It's a way for us to reduce carbon emissions from transportation sources. And today I'll be asking for your recommendation to the board to approve the draft guidelines and budget. The guidelines and the budget were developed consistent with the approval of a regional carbon reduction strategy that the Transportation Committee and the board approved in June earlier this year. It identifies how we would distribute the first 2 years of carbon reduction program funding across the 6-county region. So to identify what I'm going to cover over the next couple of minutes, focusing on core pieces of the guidelines. So the project, the scoring, and the timeline. So what type of projects will we see through the draft carbon reduction program? We would have a focus on trails, on tailpipes, and on clean modes. So to kick that off with the Trails Plan, a project that you heard from me a lot over the last couple of years, the SACOG Board of Directors approved the Regional Trail Network in August of 2022. It identified 1,000 miles of trails to support health, equity, and economic vitality. Health by creating new trail access for 407,000 of today's residents in the region. Supporting equity by almost completely eliminating the disparate trail access between low-income residents and the rest of the population. And economic vitality by connecting to the economic centers and landmark destinations that make our region, the Sacramento region, and a very great place to go. This trail, the carbon reduction program would support implementation of the trail network by funding pre-construction phases of trail projects in that 6-county network. So that is a direct response to what both the board noted and your local agencies noted as a need for funding to support trail plan implementation. When we talk about how the guidelines will focus on tailpipes, we're looking at how we can prepare our region for zero emission vehicle deployment. There are many different funding programs out there that support zero emission vehicle deployment, and we're looking to establish those primary planning documents that set you up to implement those programs in your communities, maximizing your opportunities such as co-locating fast charging with economic opportunity areas, or where people would be able to maybe stop, shop, get something to eat while they're charging their vehicle, while also avoiding the negative community impacts of zero emission vehicle deployment, such as if you have medium duty freight trucks crossing through communities to get to either a charging station or hydrogen fuel cell station. And lastly, with clean modes, we look at how we can support the programs that support mode shift to your cleaner modes such as transit, biking, and walking. These programs that have proven cost-effective and fast-acting, and how we could immediately implement some of those programs across our 6-county region. Okay, so the second focus of this discussion overlooking the guidelines is the scoring. The vast majority of the scoring emphasizes how the scope is going to set the project up for a fast implementation that will lead to reduced carbon emissions from transportation projects. It also is considering equity as an inclusive project that is going to focus on people instead of place. So how can you ensure that the project that you're developing is starting with an inclusive planning process that allows you to go beyond just geographic census tract data. And then also it includes safety as a through line for all of our transportation efforts, something that if you are looking at a transportation implementation grant, you will need to address safety as a component of it. And so thus it's reflected in our proposed scoring criteria. And then the last part I would like to bring up is the timeline. We're bringing this to you today with a proposed application due date of February 29th and a funding recommendation by June of 2024 for the board's approval. We have a longer than standard pre-application process because this is a one-time program that is meant to use the first 2 years of carbon reduction programs. This funding program will not occur again, so we wanted to have a lot of time to talk with your staff, allow your staff to come up with the different projects that are going to best meet local needs related to these different buckets of carbon reduction program strategies, but then still be able to launch immediately into implementation. That is the second part of why we are focused on the planning grants that set the stage for implementation in the immediate future. We want people to be able to program and obligate these funds or start spending them immediately, because otherwise we risk losing them as a region. These funds have a ticking time clock on them, and if they are not obligated by 2025, we will lose the first year of carbon reduction program funds to our region. So with that stressor and not wanting to lose these important funds, we have a trigger set in where if projects awarded through this one-time funding program are not obligated by 2025, they would risk being deprogrammed and then awarded to the next project on the list. So then we could spend the second year of fund on time. And with that, I hope that we can take this important step that will impact the next 15 generations, and that we can look at ways to reduce our carbon transportation impacts. With that, I would request your consideration to recommend this to the board for approval. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Questions? Director Branscombe.
How dependent is this program on a transition to electric vehicles?
I would say that it's not dependent on transition to electric vehicles because it is a broader zero emission vehicle. So you could look at hydrogen fuel cells or any other modes that are going to be consistent
so
with
alternatives. What you're saying is alternatives to internal combustion engines.
Alternatives to that, but also we're looking at it more holistically. It's not focused entirely on zero emission vehicles because we also recognize that that is one piece of a bigger puzzle of how we are going to reduce carbon emissions. Part of it is also establishing the infrastructure that we need. So how we can get those trail projects teed up for implementation so people can use the trails to get to the places they need to go. And then also of how to encourage the mode shifts through strategic mobility programs. So it's one facet of the program. I wouldn't say that it's reliant on zero emission vehicle transition.
Well, then how reliant is it on zero emission vehicle transition?
I would need to ask what you mean by reliant on.
Well, you just said it's not totally reliant, and I'm asking, okay, to what extent is it reliant?
I think that it really depends on the needs of the local agencies. Some of our agencies already have zero emission vehicle transition plans, and thus they would not be looking to this funding source for further program further program development, in which case then a larger share could go to those mode shift programs or to trail pre-construction to tee up for construction sources. It really is based on local agencies would be able to determine which leg of the stool best meets their needs and apply for it.
Maybe it's just me, but I'm going back to your opening comment, and I'm something of a student of communications and the concept of primacy and recency. And when you start off talking about the Wright brothers' carbon from their aircraft still being in the air and that kind of thing being a problem, it worries me about the rest of the presentation. I don't completely understand where you're going with this. That's concerning. Thank you.
Can I add in? So just I think there's two important things to remember, or a few important things. The carbon reduction program has a long list of eligible projects with it. What we tried to do with this specific call for projects, because there will be a subsequent one as well, is really match the potential for actually awarding projects and making advancements in certain types of projects based on the amount of budget that we have. So we have about $22 million over the course of 5 years coming in with this funding source. And we're looking at only administering 2 years worth right now, just because of the obligation deadlines that Victoria was mentioning. So when you look at that, it's about, just under $7.5 million that we have for grants. Really large, significant infrastructure projects are not really going to, we're not going to really make a dent in large infrastructure projects with that much money. So we really wanted to focus on things that were very tangible for us. And so with the Trails Plan being a huge priority for our region and for our agency, as well as zero emission, anything related to zero emission, which we've heard from our partners is a need, and wanted to respond to that, as well as other mode shift things. Those seemed like the things that we could best use these dollars for. Now, with that said, the later years of the funding, if you remember the strategy that we took to the board a few months ago, the funding will be used to implement what is going to be coming out of our RAISE grant, the Mobility Zones project, which will be much more broad in terms of all the types of projects. So to your question of how reliant is this on zero emission, I think that's just one very small portion of what the eligible projects are. It just so happens that those activities match well, some of the things that could fall under that category match well with the amount of budget that we have available. So we wanted to make it the most useful for our region. So hopefully that helps a little bit, Director Branscombe.
Thank you, Christine. You mentioned zero emissions and what you're hearing from your partners. Who are the partners you're referring to?
The partner agencies, the RTPAs, PCTPA, and EDCTC.
Hold on just a minute, not letters.
Yeah, Placer County Transportation Planning Agency, El Dorado County.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and all of our partner cities and counties in the region.
Thank you, Christine.
Sure.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, seeing none, I will then open this up for public comment. Do we have any public comment on this item?
We do have a public comment. Anthony Adams with Sacramento Regional Transit would like to make a comment. Shall I allow him to talk now?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Anthony, you're in the meeting and you have 3 minutes for your public comment.
Good morning. This is Anthony Adams, Director of Planning for Sacramento Regional Transit. I appreciate the item and the opportunity to reduce carbon in the region. I do want to make sure an important topic that I think is central to this funding, which is safety, mode shift, and reducing carbon. I want to make sure a potential funding opportunity is eligible with this, and that's something called Safe Routes to Transit. So I know that trails are eligible here. That's great. It allows people to get to where they want to go, but it doesn't necessarily connect to the different modes that get people out of cars. And Safe Routes to Transit does things such as closing sidewalk gaps, creating new safe crossings, and really improving the experience for people getting to transit, which is what we're trying to do, get people out of cars. So I just want to make sure that that will be an eligible opportunity for either planning for it, designing some of this, and maybe in the next round, funding some of these improvements. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
There's no other public comment.
Coming back, Victoria, can you address, I think the same question may have come up, and Safe Routes to Transit or the Safe Routes to School program, would those be eligible as well?
As currently framed, they would need to overlap with Regional Trail Network, or I think that would be the most direct way that something would be able to fulfill Safe Routes to Transit, is if it was part of the Regional Trail Network. As it is, that would be that would lead to a vast increase in the applications for a very small program. And we were looking at ways that were consistent with the strategy that was adopted in June, which did highlight trail implementation and ZEV development or zero emission vehicle deployment and the programs to support that. So at this point, if it was located or part of the trail network, it would be, but otherwise it might be more limited or harder to do.
Thank you. All right, no other public comment?
No other public comment.
All right, we'll close public comment and I will bring it back to the board for action for a motion.
So moved.
So,
Was that Vice Chair Soon, I believe? Thank you. And a second?
Lauren.
Thank you.
Seconded.
Motion and second, roll call vote, please.
Director Branscombe,
For the reasons I mentioned earlier, I'm concerned. My vote is no.
Chapman.
And by the way, I proudly displayed an Ecology Now bumper sticker on the back of my car back in the 1960s. I'm very much into the environment. I'm just concerned for the reasons I stated.
Thank you.
Director Chapman,
Aye.
Gog,
Yes.
Guerrero. Sorry, Director Guerrero is absent. Jennings,
Yes.
Joyner,
Aye.
Lauren,
Absolutely, yes.
Sander,
Aye.
Vice Chair Soon,
Aye.
and Chair Gallardo.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We're going to move on to our information items, the Regional Return to Work Employer Survey results, and Barbara Von Bechtold is going to be our presenter.
Good morning, everyone. Barbara Von Bechtold on the transportation team here at SACOG. Before you today, we have an information item on our Regional Return to Work Survey results. As part of the Regional Transit Network project that you've heard about, SACOG, in partnership with Valley Vision, has completed 2 phases of return to work surveying. The survey results, we hope, will assist the Regional Transit Network project staff working with our regional transit operators to identify and plan future regional transit network routes. SACOG partnered with Valley Vision starting last year in May of 2022 to conduct 2 employer surveys over a 1-year period. A variety of employers across the 6 counties of different sizes and in different employment sectors were included. The survey efforts were staggered to try to determine the staying power of new modes of working, including remote and hybrid work, and to see the level of movement back to fully in-person work as the region recovers from the pandemic. And today we have here with us from Valley Vision, Renee Jean, and she's here to provide more information on some of the major themes we found from the survey results.
Thank you, Barbara. Renee Jean, Managing Director with Valley Vision. Pleased to be here with you today, and we are very pleased to have partnered with y'all on this project. I have a corresponding presentation that I think is going to be shared. So if we could start sharing that now, I can walk through the major findings from the employer survey. Thank you. All right, perfect. And then when you're ready, if you want to go ahead to the methodology slide, perfect. So as Barbara said, we started out by conducting the first survey in May of 2022. I'm sorry, in August of 2022, and it was open for 8 weeks. In that first survey, we were able to collect information from 84 employers across a variety of industries. This second set of the survey was deployed between May and July, or was open from May to July of 2023. And it was also distributed to employers and industry partners. We used a network of, including the Workforce Boards, Chamber of Commerce, and other employer associations to help us get as broad a reach as possible. It's actually pretty challenging to survey employers. So we received 83 respondents in this last survey. And I'm going to share the key findings with you. So next slide, please. This is the distribution of industries that were represented in this second version of the survey. It was a little less diverse in industry representation than the first. There is 20% that fell into the other category. That included industries such as education, labor union responses, some graphic design, and consulting and professional services organizations. Next slide, please. This is the geographic reach of the survey. So the primary respondents were from Sacramento County, but we did have a smattering of respondents in other areas of the region. Next slide, please. And this shows the distribution of business or organization size that was represented. So we did have a pretty good distribution, minus the 26 to 50 category, which was just interesting to us, but pleased to have had respondents both from the smaller size as well as the larger size. I will highlight that 46% of respondents indicated that their the size of their employment base did not change during the COVID pandemic, which is, I think, a little bit different than some of us suspect. So in terms of workplace structures, we asked a question about what is your current workplace structure and what is your anticipated workplace structure 12 to 24 months from now. We also asked this in the first version of the survey. Hybrid work was by far the most popular option and also was expected to be the sustained most popular option. There was a slight reduction in folks that were in a fully remote workplace structure from 8% to 5%. But as you can see, overall, between the August 2022 survey and this survey, we are still predominantly in the hybrid model. Next slide, please. We asked a question about commute statistics, asking employers if they knew what percentage of their team came into the office at least once a week. What we understood, this is an increase from the last survey. So we were still recovering from the pandemic in August of 2022. Now that we're more completely out of it, this is an increase in respondents saying that 76 to 100% of their team are coming in, 68% of them are coming into the office at least once a week. Next slide. Thank you. This graph shows the percentage of positions that require an employee to utilize their vehicle during working hours. And what is significant here is half of respondents indicated a very small percentage of their team were required to utilize a vehicle. So that is encouraging in one facet. Next slide, please. 55% of organizations allow their hybrid employees to choose their on-site schedule. So this can be challenging when it comes to transportation planning. We have also understood that in terms of interviewing and talking to employers that in an employee retention market that's difficult, they are giving a lot more flexibility to staff in terms of when they're required to come into the office and offering as much flexibility as possible. That's both for an employee attraction and retention model. Thank you. The most common commute concerns that staff had communicated to respondents from the organizations were that they were spending too much time commuting, that it was interfering with their family obligations, and the cost of commuting was just too high. And as you can imagine, with the increasing costs of transportation, at least private vehicle transportation, that may be impacting the answers that we're seeing here. Parking was not as much of a concern. Next slide, please. And again, here, these are questions related to parking availability. The first pie chart shows how would you describe the availability of employee parking at your business or organization's location. Parking did not appear to be a concern with ample parking on site. The second pie chart shows, is your business or organization offering any vehicle related incentives to employees? Free parking on site was the largest incentive that was offered, but there was not any very significant vehicle related incentives being offered by employers surveyed. And then when we asked more deeply about transportation related incentives, as you can see, 63% of respondents said that they were not offering any of the selections we gave them. 19% were offering free bus, light rail, or subsidy to purchase bus or light rail passes. 9% a gas subsidy, 6% van pulling, and then 4% a rideshare subsidy. This is an increase from the previous survey of those that are not offering any kind of subsidy. We asked, are there any of your organization or business employees currently using co-working spaces? And there was a decline in interest and use of co-working spaces. So co-working spaces are relatively insignificant in the workplace structure model, according to respondents. We asked about employees relying on public transit. As far as the respondents knew, over 75% indicated that only a minority of their employees in the 0 to 25% category were relying on public transit for their commutes, as far as they were aware. Next slide, please. We asked a question about which of the following describes your organization's approach to public transit for employees as they return to the workplace. 60% indicated that they did not participate in any kind of regional transportation management. 75% did not have a transportation coordinator. And then, as you can see here, only 16% were actively encouraging their employees to take public transit to work, with 64% saying they were fine if employees did, but they didn't have any specific or active programs to incentivize it. Only 8% were actively encouraging. These two graphs show the distance to the nearest public transit stop, with the one on the left indicating proximity to a bus stop, and the one on the right indicating proximity to a light rail stop. So this was actually encouraging that that the majority had less than a 15-minute walk to a bus stop. With a light rail stop, that was a little bit of a lower percentage. And then we asked, where are employers getting information about their public transit options? 30% said transit agency websites. 18% had discussions with transit agency staff, 14% from social media, and a small percentage from SAC Region 511. So transit agency websites and transit agency staff appear to be the best place for folks that are gathering information to support their employees' public transit options. Then we did conduct interviews with leasing agents to find out what was happening in the commercial leasing market. From the leasing agents that we were able to reach and interview, this is some of what we learned. Increasing interest rates and inflation, also challenges in permits, loans, and more were a big concern for commercial leasing agents. Landlords are increasing rent, and tenants are increasingly unable to meet the new rates. Parking in the downtown area remains a challenge. Overall, office tenants are looking for shorter leases and smaller spaces. It's the kind of instability in the market. And the needs are varied across industries. There are, if they are brick and mortar operation, it's a smaller operation. And the need for storefront locations is less popular than it was pre-pandemic. And this is due to folks taking their wares online. Thank you. There's increased interest in locating operations outside of the urban core, such as we heard more than a couple times, Placer County preference over Sacramento, in terms of tenants being able to manage costs, finding more affordable locations outside of the urban core. Most of the lessors indicated public transportation. They were not hearing public transportation as a priority for prospective tenants, with the exception of nonprofit organizations and industries that required high foot traffic for their business model. Also, some additional comments that tenants had shared with the lessors were that buses do not go as far as people need them to, concerns about safety in public transportation, more efficiency in public transportation trips, and additional efforts needed to educate them about the public transportation system. And next slide, please. So key findings from the survey are that more employees are coming into the workplace, but they have control over their schedule. More employees are worried about commutes interfering with their family or other obligations. And in terms of employee attraction and retention, employers are utilizing as much flexibility as possible to attract and retain staff. Next slide. Employers are offering fewer transit-related incentives, and the use of co-working spaces has dramatically decreased post-pandemic to the point of relative insignificance at this point. Some more summary statements for you here. The majority of employers are continuing to utilize a hybrid work structure and expecting to maintain this. More team members are coming into the office than they were a year ago. However, they have enormous flexibility in being able to choose their own schedule. Only a small number of staff are utilizing public transportation as far as respondents were aware, and the majority were not using transportation incentives, and transit agency websites were the best source of information. Parking is also not a primary concern for the majority of respondents. And as we said earlier, tenants are looking for shorter leases and smaller spaces. Next slide. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
All right. Thank you. Any questions? Director Branscombe.
Thank you. That's a good presentation. Thank you. Have you connected this to thinking on what the impact on productivity is with remote work? And I'm thinking in terms of, I've read an article, I think it was in Forbes, where a group out of Stanford came up with conclusion that it probably reduces productivity by about 10%. It's interesting, Zoom, the company that lives off of remote work in many ways, has demanded 100% of their employees show up in the office every day. But productivity is a question mark. And if productivity does go down, the article also addresses factors that can offset that. For example, a significant savings in rent expense and office expense because there's not as many people in the office. Mm-hmm. You've been thinking about this. Do you have any response to that? Thank you.
Yes, I read the article. There are some conflicting reports out there about the productivity correlation to remote work. So we are reading and monitoring that. I think in terms of employee attraction and retention, that is a primary concern for employers right now in a tight job market. And so the more flexible they can be, the wider the candidate pool that they have for the positions that they have available. So I think that's driving a lot of their decisions. I have read the same or similar correlations that you're suggesting and have been expressed, that if employers use the savings from their physical space to invest in employee training or staff engagement, that may offset any productivity losses. But I think that's all a very new and emerging field of work that we're all monitoring and curious about.
Yeah, I'm thinking of all of the employers that are headquartered in downtown Sacramento area, or Sacramento, if you will. And the impact on, I presume they rent most of their space, but perhaps they own a lot of their space. It seems like it's going to create a significant amount of pressure on valuations on real property, and also on the economic activity, restaurants, what have you.
Yes, I think we are in uncharted territory here about how we're going to utilize spaces based on the significant changes that have occurred in the place-based work. What we've seen between these two surveys, so we were grateful to do these with y'all, is that it's relatively stabilized now, that the hybrid work is here to stay, the flexibility in employee schedules. There's always changing dynamics based on the labor market. So we can watch and see at some point the labor market may loosen up. And if employers put more constraints on employees when they have a larger candidate pool, like requiring more to come into the office or things like that, that is something that could happen. Although I'm sure many of you have been monitoring the data and information regarding working age population in our area. So we're not projected to have a dramatic improvement in labor market conditions in terms of the number of candidates available in the relatively near future.
Thank you. An excellent presentation. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Director Jennings.
Thank you very much, Chair. It was an excellent presentation, Renee, and I appreciate you delivering it to us. I think I want to know the plan for getting out to the greater region as far as presenting this information, so that others can understand what you found through your study, through your work.
That is a good question. We wanted to bring it to you all first. I will say with the first employer survey that we did with you all, it was a combined survey, but both on transportation related questions as well as training and upskilling questions. It was that first one was a co-sponsored survey with the Centers of Excellence in Los Rios Community College District. And we did present those findings across a variety of sources, including to the community college system, the regional workforce board system, and others. This is more specific related to transportation. We're happy to do presentations wherever you think might be useful.
That would be helpful, because I think when I looked at the 83 respondents, 35% being nonprofit, 20% being government, what I didn't see was the number of corporations and large businesses, and maybe they are represented, but I didn't see the percentage indicating that they participated in this.
Yes, thank you. And this is our second employer survey, so we're learning a lot about doing this, and it is difficult to get employers to respond. So we are actually having some internal conversations about what is the best way to design employer survey engagement. We do a lot of consumer surveying, and we have done that for many years and have a model that is very successful. Businesses seem to be heavily constrained. Our first survey with you all in Centers of Excellence, we were able to offer a gift card to respondents that was sponsored by Centers of Excellence at Los Rios. And but between that survey and this survey, we didn't see a significant difference in the number of folks who responded. So we're still trying to figure that out. What is the best model for this? And what we have learned is it's extremely labor intensive. And we did actually some just dropping by employers, walking in, as well as phone calling and filling out the survey over the phone. So just relying on email distribution, even though we're using trusted employer association partners, is not enough. It requires some significant person-to-person outreach, and especially with the larger companies, because you have to get to the right person in order to get the response. But we think this is important. We have consumer information. We need to know what employers are doing as it continues to be, I don't want to say unstable, but that's the word in my mind. I want to use a more positive term if somebody has one. Continues to change. We need to keep the pulse on what employers are doing and what they are thinking in terms of how they design their workplace structures.
Great. Well, I'll be in touch with you, because I have a lot more questions. I don't want to dominate this venue, but I have a lot more questions, and I'm very interested in the comparisons between the first survey you did and when you did it, and the second survey you did. And I want to just kind of see the commonalities and the comparisons of what we learned from that survey compared to this survey. So I'll be in touch with you, but thanks very much for the presentation.
Yes, thank you.
And Director Jennings, if I can just add, I was really interested in how this turned out, and have talked to Barbara too about whether or not SACOG could do some ongoing continued surveying as well. To Renee's point, it's continuing to change. I think we definitely need to keep our eye on this for a lot of the work that we do in understanding how we can meet the needs of the region. So this is something I think that we're going to try to keep going. So.
Amen.
It's needed right now, I guarantee you.
I can tell you, I know in South Placer, looking at Paul and the folks from Roseville and Rockland, One of the things that we're noticing, and I'd like for us to get together and delve a little deeper, is I know out in one new area for us, out in 30% of our new residents are coming from the Bay Area. And that's really a different change. And we believe that it's in part because of the opportunity to telecommute. They're not having to drive to the Bay Area. And so we're definitely seeing a demographic change. So I think we talked about the economic impact too. I expect in Sacramento, it's got to be a massive hit to the restaurants and to the mini marts and the folks here. And I wonder, is it changing? Are they going out to lunch at their home areas, or are they just going to the fridge and doing something? So I think it'd be really well worth us to dig a little deeper into the cities in particular and see what impacts that we're seeing. And then also, I think in the government side in particular, but everywhere, is the equity of providing telework. My firefighters have to come in, my police officers have to come in, the park and rec crew are there, but do you let the office staff of the park and rec crew work remote, and how does that impact in equity with your with the employees? So I think that's one of those issues that is going to come up, certainly. And who gets to decide down the road? Do we decide, is it by the position? How do you avoid the look of, oh, it's favoritism that you let this person work from home and this person has to come in? I think we have a lot of areas to look at to see how the impacts are going to be. Rick, did you have your hand up again, or?
I did, because I told you I had 1,000 questions, but
yeah.
you just triggered a question, and this is my last one for today. Have you had the opportunity? I sit on the Regional Transit Board of Directors. Have you had an opportunity to make this presentation to regional transit or other transit organizations? And what was if you did, what was their reaction to it?
This is our first presentation, sir.
Okay, good. So we can help you to set that up, because I think it needs to be made to other transit organizations.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. I really look forward to continuing this and updating as we go and expanding in some ways. So thank you. If there are no other questions, then we are going to move on to our next item. And that's item 10, the Senate Bill 125 Transit Funding Update. And Chris Doherty is our presenter.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members of the committee. Chris Doherty on the transportation staff here. I have a brief presentation on the Senate Bill 125 and some additional transit funding that's coming to the region. Let me share my screen quickly. All right, can everybody see my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Great, thank you. So in July of this year, as a rider bill to the state budget, California passed Senate Bill 125. This bill added approximately $5.1 billion for transit capital and operations across California. These funds will be distributed through primarily two different programs. First is the longstanding, what we call TIRCIP, which is the Transit Intercity Rail Capital Program, and then created a new program called the Zero Emission Transit Capital Program, or it doesn't really have a great acronym that you can say, so I'll just call it the Zero Emission Program. Basically, these funds will be distributed through these two programs. Through the TIRCIP program, the funds will be distributed over 2 fiscal years, this and next. For the Zero Emission program, it'll be distributed over the next 4 years. The Zero Emission program is really designed to assist our transit agencies in the conversion to zero emission technologies as those statewide mandates are coming up by 2030. The state RTPAs will be the primary recipient of these funds, and they'll be distributed by formula. Up here is the table of what will be coming into the SACOG region between the 3 different RTPAs. SACOG, being the RTPA for the 4 counties, will be receiving through the TIRCIP program over 2 fiscal years, approximately a little over $200 million, and through the Zero Emission program, about $37 million. But for the region, about $297 million will be coming into the region through these two programs. So a significant amount of new funds for transit for both capital and operations. We are required to submit an allocation plan to CalSTA. CalSTA, the transportation agency, administers these programs. That initial program is going to be due on December 31st of this year. That is a very short turnaround time. To put that in context, the final program guidelines for these two programs were released to the public last Friday. So we've had very little time to react and to put a plan together. But as of right now, we are working towards working with our partners, our TPA partners in the region and our operators through a series of one-on-one meetings to identify what their needs are and to put together that initial allocation plan in December. It is important to note for that initial allocation plan, it is required to have an initial one submit in December, but you can update and change that plan on a rolling basis from then on. With that initial plan, though, we have a couple other components that have to come with that. One is if we plan to use for any of these funds for operations in the next couple of years, we'll have to do some financial analysis and work with our transit operators on that, and also submit transit service data and I believe ridership data as a package to CalSTA by December 31st. As I said, we're working with our operators right now and with our partners to kind of start the process of delivering that plan and look forward to this. We'll be bringing this program back to you most likely in November with an update, but also in December to approve a plan as we move towards that December 31st date. One last point of note, I noted in the staff report, because the staff report was drafted prior to the release of the final guidelines, it was identified there that the cost to administer these programs, it was not clarified in those programs, in the original program guidelines. It was clarified that our TPAs are eligible for up to 1% of the total funding coming to the two programs to administer this program moving forward. So with that, I'm available for any questions you have, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions on this item? Pardon me while we wait for that screen to pop up so I can see your faces. There we go. All right, I am not seeing any hands up. Thank you very much for the presentation. We'll look forward to talking again in November.
Thank you.
All right, our next item is the SB 375 greenhouse gas reduction target, and I believe Clinton Holtzen is going to be presenting today.
I think we actually have Kyle presenting, and then I will be backing him up on any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair and members of the board. My name is Kyle Shipley. I'm the Transportation Modeling and Analysis Group Manager here on staff at SACOG. I'm going to share my screen. Can everyone see the slide okay?
Yes.
Great, thank you. As I mentioned, I'm Kyle Shipley. I'm the Transportation Modeling Analysis staff here at SACOG, and I'm here today to present information item on SB 375. This is our greenhouse gas reduction target. And this is going to be the first of a three-part series on our greenhouse gas reduction target. We're going to be coming back to you for more information over the next couple of months. So today, I'd like to focus specifically on our state requirements related to greenhouse gases, but I'd really like to hear from this committee on any additional items you'd like to hear, and we can bring that back for further discussion on the next part of this series. So today, we'll focus on a few different items. The first, a brief overview on the 2025 blueprint. Second, a summary on our sustainable community strategy. Third, on the greenhouse gas reduction target itself for our region. And then finally, some of the implications on if we are not able to achieve this target. So first of all, what is the 2025 blueprint? The blueprint is our regional long-range transportation plan and land use policy document. This is mandated by both the federal and state government. The plan outlines recommendations for public land use policy and transportation investment strategies for the Sacramento region for the next 20 to 30 years. The blueprint includes a sustainable community strategy, or SCS, demonstrating how the region can achieve the state mandated greenhouse gas emission reduction from passenger vehicles through integrated land use and transportation planning. I'd like to inform you all a bit of how SB 375 came to be, and including the relationship to AB 32 and the latest scoping plan. So back in 2006, the legislation passed the California Global Warming Solutions Act, also known as AB 32, which created a comprehensive multi-year program to reduce greenhouse gases emissions in California. AB 32 required the California Air Resource Board, or CARB, to develop a scoping plan that described the approach for California to reduce greenhouse gases to achieve the goal by reducing emissions to 1990 levels by 2020. I should note the latest scoping plan, released in 2022, lays out a path to achieve the target for carbon neutrality and reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 85% below 1990 levels, no later than 2045. So the Sustainable Communities and Climate Protection Act, known as SB 375, excuse me, supports the state's climate goals set out by AB 32 to help reduce these emissions. This was also updated in 2017 by CARB, which is the latest version of SB 375 greenhouse gas reduction targets that we have for our region. So under the Sustainable Communities Act, CARB sets the regional targets for the greenhouse gas emissions from passenger vehicles. CARB sets these targets for 2020 and 2035. Each of the 18 MPO regions must prepare a sustainable community strategy and demonstrate the regional transportation plan, which how this will reduce the reduction of greenhouse gases. So once the SCS is adopted, CARB must review the adopted SCS to accept or reject it. If implemented, the plan would in fact meet the targets. If the SCS would not meet the regional targets, the MPO must prepare an alternative planning strategy, also known as an APS, that then shows how we might be able to achieve those targets. So in 2018, CARB adopted a more aggressive SB 375 target as one of its measures to support the progress towards the latest scoping plan. This aims to achieve a 19% reduction in the statewide per capita greenhouse gas emissions by 2035. You can see here on this slide, in the 2012 and 2016 plans, our target was 16% per capita by 2035. And in the current adopted SCS and in the 2025 blueprint, our target is now 19% reduction. I should also note that the 19% reduction is contingent on the state supporting funding of Green Means Go. So SACOG's regional target, we have achieved our 19% or the reduction target for greenhouse gases in the last 3 MTPs. The SCS has met the target and allows the region to compete for certain state transportation funds. SACOG as a region has received over $1 billion in transportation funding from these state programs since 2018. We know that this target is getting more and more challenging to achieve due to a number of different factors. So the question is, what is the implications if we do not achieve the greenhouse gas reduction target set by the SCS? As I mentioned earlier, we need to go into an alternative planning strategy. And what is the risk of that? the region must adopt this strategy, this would be an additional scenario, so more time and resources as part of the MTPSCS Horizon Year. And this would include additional measures necessary to achieve the greenhouse gas emissions reduction target. There are also several state funding programs that require the region to adopt an SES and not an APS in order to compete for those funding programs. So I listed out here a few of those programs. The funding sources at risk in the regional greenhouse gas reduction target cannot be met, and APS is prepared. We then can include this includes the competitive transportation funding programs created by SB1 and other funding programs from California's cap and trade programs listed on the slide here. So what are some of the challenges that we have meeting the greenhouse gas reduction target? And we know that it's going to be difficult to achieve the 2035 reduction target. In particular, the population growth both at the national, state, and regional level is slowing down, which can create challenges to achieving a per capita greenhouse gas per capita target. While the region has had many successes in planning growth patterns in the SES, we continue to struggle on unlocking some of the infill potential in many corridors within the region's existing footprint. Also, while still a critical service for many residents in the region, we've seen transit ridership decline during and following the pandemic. So this slide here is a graph created by CARB, and this is the latest data showing the VMT, or vehicle miles traveled, is still increasing, which presents a major challenge for the state achieving its carbon neutrality no later than 2045. Based on CARB's scoping plan, we can see in the red line that if we continue with historical VMT growth trends, that we will not achieve the target. The green line you can see here is the trajectory outlined by CARB's scoping plan, which is what is needed to achieve carbon neutrality by 2045. Should note this trajectory includes 25% reduction from 2019 VMT levels and by 2030, and 30% reduction of VMT by 2045. So I mentioned this is one of a three-part series. We're going to come back to you in November. We're going to focus on some of the learnings that we've found in the pathway testing related to greenhouse gas emissions and what other factors may contribute to the results. We'll also come back to you with land use and transportation strategies available to help greenhouse gas emissions. And then early in 2024, once we have our discussion scenario adopted, we'll bring some preliminary greenhouse gas results. I'd like to thank you for your time, and at this point, open up to any questions you may have.
Thank you. All right, Vice Chair Soon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kyle, thanks for that presentation. I was just curious what progress, if any, have we made on how we will account for or demonstrate the electrical vehicle adoption. You know, I see a graph that takes us out to 2045. We know the requirement for all electrical vehicles to be sold by 2035, and I know the proliferation is somewhat slow, but I got to imagine there is some effect there. And then Valley Vision's presentation aside, I do know that there are a lot of people at the state that still telework significantly, like coming into the office only twice a week. So in terms of vehicle miles traveled and GHG emissions, you know, obviously if you have electrical vehicles, they're not creating GHG. If you have people, you know, working from home 3 times a week, for, you know, at least for a portion of our population in this area, I gotta imagine there will be some impact. And so I was just wondering if there's any plan, how will we account for this in what is also a plan, right? MTP. So thank you.
Yeah, I can begin to address the question. Thank you. Those are both great questions, Director Soon, and Clint, maybe you can chime in as well on what we're working on. So with regards to electric vehicle implementation, that is actually part of the scoping plan that CARB has recently released. So we're actively working with them to try to best understand how that will impact our strategies. But ultimately, and you mentioned this, by 2035, there will only be new fleet, right? So we know that there will be many combustion vehicles still on the road, right? In particular in California, car shelf life is, it lasts a long time. I myself have some old cars. So that's not going to get us all the way there, but it's certainly going to help, and we're going to look into it. Clint, I don't know if you have anything more to add on that, and if you want to take the second question regarding telework.
Yeah, I could, well, so, I mean, and also given time, we can maybe come back as well in part of the next two series, Director Soon, and maybe dive into the electric vehicle piece a little bit more. But as Kyle said, it's part of the scoping plan. So there's still internal combustion engines expected to be driving around 2035 and beyond, right? And so the 19%, the targets that we have account for that, and these are the additional reductions that CARB says it needs on top of the vehicle, the electric vehicle plans that they've got. We do have the ability to demonstrate that we've got programs in our region that accelerate electric vehicle deployment here, and we can take some credit for that in our greenhouse gas reduction, but it is accounted for, and maybe we can dive into that even more in some of the upcoming presentations. And then as far as telework goes, that is something that we have had telework assumptions in prior plans. I think we are absolutely digging back into those. I think it will be a bigger part of our strategy this time. One of the challenges we have that we want to probably talk to you all about in the coming months is, depending on how telework is operating, if people are spending part of their day at the office and then heading home, what we have seen is VMT come back faster than return to work. Some of the thought about why that might be happening, and maybe we can use some of our big data platforms to help us examine these questions. Some of the reason that might be happening is that people are now, they're working at home, but they're driving to the grocery store and then home, and then to the kids pickup and then home, to a soccer game and then home, rather than trip chaining like they may have been doing when they were commuting to an office. That is kind of one of the theories that we have, but the way that we kind of think about telework policies or encouragement and things like that in the region will have an impact on VMT, and that is absolutely one of the strategies that I think we'll dig into. It's a pretty powerful one, particularly coming out of the pandemic where it's much more normalized now. I think that's one that we can definitely leverage as we talk kind of greenhouse gas reduction strategies going forward.
Thank you. Look forward to hearing more.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you both for the presentation, and we will move on to our next item, which is Mia, you're going to talk to us about our South Sacramento area tour for our next meeting.
Yes, thank you so much. And I will keep this very short, but I just wanted to invite you all, as you may have heard or received emails. Also, I'm Mia Lopez. I'm on the communications team. We're planning a tour in the South Sacramento area on Thursday, October 19th, and it is immediately following the board meeting. So we hope that you can stay and join us. We have quite an awesome packed agenda. The tour is part of our board practices objective in the Racial Equity Action Plan. And the purpose of these tours are to collaborate with partners and CBOs engaged in racial equity work and facilitate at least one site visit a year. The tour is focused on racial equity and inclusion, barriers, and successes. We're working with CBOs such as La Familia, who's going to be giving us a tour of their campus and talk about some of the community work that they've been doing to provide more resources to their community members. We will also be getting a tour of the Franklin Boulevard District and getting a sneak peek of the Complete Streets project that is set to break ground in 2024. And then we will also be visiting our the San Juan Motel site, which has received 2 million in early activation funding from Green Means Go. So great opportunity to see a project just before it gets started. And then lastly, we'll also have SAC-RT on the tour, who will be giving us a rundown of their bus rapid transit line that's planned along Stockton Boulevard. So there's a lot to learn, and I've been learning a lot through this process in planning the tour. Our goal is to have the majority of board members attend, so we really hope that you can make it. You can RSVP, just send me an email. You can raise your hand here too if you're planning on going. All right, Director Jennings, perfect. We got you on the list. I will add your name, and we look forward to seeing you there. So thank you very much. Let me know if you have any questions as well.
Thank you. Any questions? I think it's a great, another step towards our learning about our communities and each other. So I'm looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, well, with that, that is all of the items on our agenda. Is there anything else for the good of the order anybody had? Director Jennings.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of put a little bit more on the South Sacramento tour. I've been working with La Familia. My nonprofit organization has been around since 1996, and we've been working with La Familia for years, over 20 years. They do incredible work. I think you'll see an organization that's truly making a difference in the South Sacramento area and in the entire region of Sacramento. So I'm just encouraging everyone that can to go on the tour, because I think you'll see a lot of great things that are happening in communities that traditionally have been underrepresented and have been distressed. And so nonprofits that are making a difference, like La Familia, and I think you'll be impressed with what you see. So I'm just putting in a little bit more mustard on top of the hot dog to make sure that you put this on your calendar and you make sure that you attend this, because you're going to see something that you might want to take to your communities as well.
Thank you. And you gave me an idea for a next icebreaker: ketchup or mustard. That might be. Well, thank you. Anyone else? Well, as we adjourn today, I'd like to take just a second and adjourn in honor of a woman who has truly gave her lifetime to public service and has been laid to rest today. As we know, Senator Feinstein has been a dramatic impact in California, but I think as I can be personal and say, as a woman, holy smokes, she literally opened the doors. Her first time she was elected, she was the first woman president of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. She was the first woman mayor of San Francisco. She was the first woman senator from the state of California, the first female chair of the Senate Rules Committee, the first female chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee. A lot of firsts and a lot of doors that she has opened for so many. And I know as we focus on our race, equity, and inclusion, I think it's something that we're, no matter what side of the aisle any of us are from, we can be tremendously grateful for her lifetime of public service. So I'd like to adjourn in honor of Senator Dianne Feinstein. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Great job, Chair. Great job.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Bye, everybody.